Let me tell you a story about someone who should never have been found. Someone who should never have been seen at all. The words slipped from the lips of the old man like a half-whisper, half-confession, as though he feared even the walls might be listening. His eyes didn't meet anyone's as he spoke. They drifted somewhere else to a place years and miles away, a place buried in silence and dust. It began, he said, when his family moved into a modest neighborhood, rows of homes lined together like teeth. Their paint faded, their balconies leaning slightly forward as if trying to eavesdrop on the world below. Theirs was a two-story home, ordinary in every way. At least that's what they thought. The first weeks passed quietly enough, settling in, meeting neighbors, learning which corner shops sold the best bread and which streets were safe to walk after dark. But soon, whispers reached them about a woman who lived only 2 houses away. Her name wasn't spoken often. People simply called her the Bengali woman. She was no ordinary neighbor. Some called her a healer. Others muttered darker words, witch, sorceress, tantric. The man's mother dismissed it all. Old wives' tales, she said, shaking her head. But the children in the street kept their distance from that house, where curtains never seemed to move and the air felt heavy. Even in daylight, the Bengali woman was rarely seen, but when she appeared it was impossible to ignore her. Draped in faded saris, her eyes sharp and unblinking, she spoke in a tone that was almost mocking. Once she passed the man's father at the water pump, muttering, "One word from me and men like you fly like dry leaves." She smiled then, a wide, toothless smile that clung to his mind long after she had walked away. It might have ended as gossip, as nothing more than neighborhood superstition. But then came the landlord's decision. The house where the Bengali woman lived wasn't hers. It belonged to a stern-faced man who lived abroad, visiting only once a year. Tired of her late payments and endless arguments, he decided to rent the lower floor to a new family. The Bengali woman was furious. She stormed into the landlord's courtyard demanding he reconsider. "This house is mine," she shouted. "It has always been mine." But the landlord was unmoved. Within weeks, a new family moved in, their children's laughter spilling into the courtyard, their furniture crowding the hallways. That was when the harassment began. At night, the new tenants heard the sharp clang of locks on the shared bathroom door. Water stopped flowing mysteriously from the upper tank. Food left on the kitchen counter spoiled within hours, reeking of rot, though the air around was cool. The Bengali woman claimed innocence, but her smirk told another story. Finally, the landlord himself confronted her. That was when she spoke the words that would stain everything that followed. She looked at the landlord's son, barely 20, full of restless youth, and said, "Before Diwali, he will be gone." The street fell silent. Neighbors exchanged nervous glances. The young man laughed, brushing it off, but unease settled over the community like a storm cloud. From that day, strange things began to happen. The landlord's son complained of feeling watched even when alone. His dreams turned restless, visions of shadows pressing against the walls, whispers curling around his bed. He grew pale, his once bold laughter brittle and thin. The man telling the story remembered it well, for he was only a boy then, lying awake in his own home, listening to his parents whisper in the next room. "It's nonsense," his father muttered, but his mother crossed herself every night before bed. The Bengali woman, meanwhile, grew bolder. She lingered in doorways, humming to herself. She threw broken glass into the street where children played. Sometimes at dawn, she was seen crouching by the roots of trees, burying things wrapped in cloth and string. And then, one night, the man heard a noise he would never forget. It was late. The street drowned in silence when a scream tore through the neighborhood. Not the cry of an animal nor the startled shout of a drunk, but a scream raw with terror. Lights snapped on, doors creaked open. People poured into the street. The landlord's son had collapsed. His friends carried him into the courtyard, his face pale, his eyes staring wildly as though he had seen something unspeakable. He kept muttering the same words. She was there. She was waiting. At the gate. The neighbors begged the landlord to take his son away, to move out, to seek help. But pride held him back. "No witch will drive me from my home," he declared. Yet his voice shook when he said it. Weeks passed. Diwali drew closer. The boy grew weaker. Some mornings he refused to rise from bed, trembling as though from fever, though no illness could be found. His friends stopped visiting. His laughter, once so loud it carried through the streets, vanished. And then, the night before Diwali, he insisted on going out. No one knows why. Some said he wanted to prove he wasn't afraid. Others whispered he was being pulled, called into the dark. What happened next was spoken of only in hushed tones. A truck, they said. A sudden screech of brakes. The landlord's son thrown across the road, blood spreading like ink on the pavement. When news spread, silence fell over the neighborhood. The curse had come true. The storyteller's voice cracked here. He leaned forward, lowering his tone to a whisper. That was the night, he said, that I realized we were living in a house that waited for sorrow, waited for death. We thought it had claimed only him, but we were wrong, so very wrong. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, as though the story itself carried weight, and with a trembling hand he revealed the next part, how his own family became entangled in the curse they thought they had escaped. The boy's death cracked the neighborhood open like an old rotting house, every secret spilling out, every rumor suddenly heavier with truth. At first, people whispered it was only an accident. A truck, poor timing, nothing more. But in every home, behind every shut door, they remembered her words. Before Diwali, he will be gone. The Bengali woman didn't weep. She didn't even pretend. When neighbors watched her the following morning, she stood at her threshold, her sari draped loosely around her shoulders, her thin mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. And then she said in a voice too calm, "I told you, no one listens." From then on, the street belonged to her shadow. The storyteller's family, then just a young couple with their children, felt it most keenly. His mother began waking at night, swearing she heard scratching on the walls. His father grew short-tempered, snapping at trivial things, his face drawn with sleeplessness. And the boy, our storyteller, years younger, began to feel eyes on him whenever he played outside, as though something leaned from behind curtains, waiting. It didn't take long for the decision. They would leave. Pack their belongings, close the doors, vanish before the woman's gaze settled on them fully. But leaving was not escape. On the night they departed, as the last of their trunks was loaded onto the cart, the woman appeared. She leaned against the gate, her figure half swallowed by shadows. "Run if you want," she whispered. "The house will wait." "It always waits," the boy shivered. He would never forget that phrase. The new home seemed safe enough at first. It stood on a quieter street with kind neighbors and fewer memories. For months, the family dared to believe they had outrun the shadow, but darkness, once invited, has a way of finding its way in. It began small, a voice calling the boy's name in an empty room. The feeling of someone brushing past him in the corridor, though no one was there. Objects moved, keys in the wrong place. Cupboards ajar. One night, as his mother folded clothes, she found a small bundle tucked among the linens. Red thread knotted around clumps of hair, pins piercing the bundle through. Her hands trembled. She didn't speak of it aloud, but the fear in her eyes was clear. The father burned it that very night in the courtyard. The flames cracked and spat as though the cloth resisted burning, and the smell, thick, foul, like burning flesh, clung to their throats. The neighbors began to notice, too. "Your boy," one woman whispered to the mother. "He looks thinner." "Is he ill?" another said. "He stares too long at corners," as though listening. The boy couldn't explain it. At night, when the house fell silent, he heard it, whispers threading through the dark. Not words he could understand, but sounds thick with intent. Sometimes it was laughter, faint and mocking. Sometimes it was a low chant, rhythmic, endless, burrowing into his ears until he covered his head with his pillow. His parents argued more. The mother begged to move again. The father, pride stiff in his spine, refused. "We can't keep running," he said. "If we leave again, she wins." But the house didn't care who won or lost. It only waited. One evening, as dusk swallowed the sky, the boy found himself staring into the old, dust-smeared mirror in the hallway. At first it showed only his own reflection. Thin face, restless eyes. Then slowly a second figure bled into view behind him. A boy, his age, maybe younger. Pale skin, hollow eyes. A mouth that seemed to move, though no sound came. The boy spun around. The hallway was empty, but when he looked back at the mirror, the pale child remained, lips stretched into a smile that wasn't human. He screamed. His parents came running, but by then the mirror showed only him again, wide-eyed, trembling, pointing with a shaking finger. His father slapped him. desperate to snap sense into him, while his mother clutched him tight, whispering prayers against his hair. That night, no one in the house slept. Soon, even strangers began to notice. Once, when guests visited, one woman gasped mid-conversation, staring toward the corner of the room. "Who is that boy?" she asked, her voice thin. But when everyone turned, there was nothing. Another time, the boy's older cousin used a new mobile app, one of those filters that places silly ears and noses on faces. She aimed it at him, laughing, but then she froze. On the screen beside him, the app had mapped a face, small, childlike, smiling, but no one was there. The phone was dropped, shattering the moment into panic. The climax came slowly, like rot spreading through wood. The boy's mother grew frail. She said the air in the house was thick, suffocating, as though someone pressed against her chest whenever she lay down. His father stopped going to work on time, eyes shadowed, temper brittle. The boy himself drifted in and out of feverish states, sometimes waking with scratches across his arms, as though clawed by invisible hands, and always there was the whisper. One night, unable to bear it, the boy crept toward the sound. It came from the lower room, the one his parents kept locked after finding another bundle of strange cloth beneath the floorboards. His hand shook as he turned the knob. The door swung open with a groan. Inside, the room was empty, except for a doll sitting upright in the corner. Its glass eyes glinted in the moonlight. Its body was pierced through with long, rusted needles. Around it, chalk lines marked strange symbols on the floor, half faded but still pulsing with something unseen. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around him, filling his head until his knees buckled. He wanted to run, to scream, but the doll's eyes held him frozen. Its lips seemed to curl. That was when his mother found him, dragging him out of the room as he thrashed and cried. She slammed the door shut, whispering prayers, tears streaking her cheeks. "Not again," she sobbed. "Not again." The boy never forgot the way her voice cracked, as though she had seen this before. The family was breaking. His father began drinking, muttering that nothing they did mattered. His mother spent her nights in prayer, her body shrinking into itself. The boy grew quieter, avoiding mirrors, avoiding corners, avoiding sleep. Then one evening he heard it, clearer than ever. Not whispers. Not chants, but a voice, childlike, sweet, right by his ear. "Stay with me." His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned, and for the briefest instant he saw it. A pale boy crouched in the corner of his room, grinning, hands clawing at the floor, and then gone. He didn't scream this time. He couldn't. His throat locked, his breath shallow. That night he realized something terrible. The house wasn't just haunted. The house was waiting, and it wasn't waiting for his father. Or his mother. It was waiting for him. The boy knew after that night that the thing inside the house had chosen him. He tried to tell his mother, whispering it as though even the walls might overhear. "It's not after you. It's after me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. She only pressed a trembling hand against his cheek and murmured prayers he barely recognized. His father didn't listen at all. He had retreated into bottles and silence, his face a stone mask. But the house listened. The scratches on his arms grew deeper, raw red lines that appeared in the mornings as if carved during sleep. Sometimes he woke gasping, a weight pressing down on his chest. Once he opened his eyes to find a pale hand resting on his throat, vanishing the instant he blinked. The whispers no longer hid. They spoke in his ear, circling him, filling the rooms until silence became impossible. "Stay," they breathed. "Stay with me. Stay forever." And worse, he had begun to answer. It happened one evening when his mother's sister came to stay. She was a stern woman, unafraid of superstition, who insisted the family was imagining everything. "There are no ghosts," she said firmly. "Only weak minds. I'll prove it." That night she laid out her bedding in the cursed lower room, the one where the doll had been found, where chalk marks still stained the floor. She laughed at their protests, waving them off. "Watch, nothing will happen." But by dawn the laughter was gone. The family woke to her screams, wild and high-pitched. They rushed to the room and found her thrashing against the floor, clawing at her own skin, shrieking, "He's here!" The child. "Get him off me!" When they pulled her away, the doll was sitting upright again, its glassy eyes staring, needles glinting. The aunt left before the sun was fully risen, refusing to speak another word. She never returned. After that, the boy began to see the pale child more often, in reflections in the corners of rooms, sometimes even standing at the foot of his bed. The figure never moved quickly, never lunged or clawed, it only waited, watching, smiling. The boy stopped eating. His skin stretched thin over bones, his eyes ringed with shadow. His mother wept openly now, clutching holy books, begging priests for help. Some came, muttering prayers, sprinkling water. For a time it seemed to work. The whispers quieted. The figure withdrew, but always it returned. Stronger. The last priest who came, a weary man with lines carved deep in his face, looked at the boy and shook his head. "This house," he said softly, "is not haunted. It is claimed. And the one who waits here, waits for him." The breaking point came on a stormy night, rain lashing against the windows, thunder shaking the walls. The boy lay shivering in his bed, fever burning through him. His mother sat nearby, murmuring prayers. His father was absent again, lost in his own bitterness. Suddenly the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The boy opened his eyes and saw him. The pale child stood beside the bed, closer than ever before. His smile stretched wide, too wide, and his whisper slithered through the dark. "It's time." The boy tried to scream, but no sound came. He felt icy fingers curl around his wrist, tugging, pulling him toward the edge of the bed. His body moved without his will, sliding down, his bare feet meeting the cold floor. His mother shrieked, grabbing him, pulling back, her prayers rising into a desperate wail. The boy's body jerked between them, pulled by two forces, one of love, one of darkness, and then his mouth opened. But it wasn't his voice that came out. "Let me in." The words, low and guttural, echoed from his throat. His mother recoiled, horror painted across her face. She clutched him tighter, screaming his name, screaming for God. But his body convulsed, his eyes rolling back, and in that moment she knew something else was inside him. When morning came, the boy remembered nothing. But his mother never forgot. They moved again soon after, abandoning everything they couldn't carry. They never spoke of the house, never dared to pass that street again. But escape was an illusion, because sometimes, even in the new home, the boy still caught glimpses. A pale figure watching from the corner. A whisper curling around his ear. The house might have been left behind, but its waiting thing had followed. Years passed. The boy grew into a man. He tried to live as though it were only a story, only a nightmare from childhood. He studied, worked, married. He tried to forget, but forgetting is not the same as freedom. Once, long after, he met the Bengali woman's daughter by chance. She looked weary, shadows under her eyes. They spoke quietly, both knowing too much. "My mother," she said, lost her mind. She saw women in every shadow, heard screams in her sleep. The rituals she cast, they turned on her. She died raving, tearing at her skin. She lowered her gaze. "And me, I won't live long." "None of us do." She was right. Not long after, news came that she had died during pregnancy, leaving behind a newborn girl. The man felt the weight of it then, that curses never die. They simply change hands. Now as he finished his story, the old man's eyes finally lifted. He looked straight ahead into the dim glow of the room and whispered, "The house still waits. It waited for me when I was a child. It waits still somewhere for others. And sometimes, in the corner of my own home, I think it waits for my son." The fire crackled. The silence stretched. And for a moment every listener swore they heard it too. Soft laughter, childlike, drifting from the shadows. A laughter that promised the waiting was not over.